Welcome to Murray Montgomery's Lone Star Diary. Murray is a published author and syndicated newspaper columnist. He writes nonfiction stories about the Old West, most of them about cowboys and pioneers to the Lone Star State. Other true stories with an Old West flavor from all parts of America will also be included from time to time. Murray has been writing for some 20 years for the online magazine, Texas Escapes. So sit back and relax, and enjoy these true stories of Old Texas. Now, here's Murray.
Hey everybody, I'm glad to be back with you this evening on the 28th edition of Lone Star Diary. You know, the past several editions we've talked about the Texas Revolution. We've talked about the first shot that was fired for Texas independence, and it was fired at Gonzales, Texas on October the 2nd of 1835. And this is the event that kicked off the revolution. And in between and after that event, we had the Texas Army take the Alamo from the Mexican Army. Then we had the Mexican Army come and take it back. That was when Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna led his army back into Texas to quell the rebels. After that, we had the Battle of Goliad, which wasn't much. The commander of the Goliad men was Colonel Fannin, and he eventually gave up. And all his men were taken out on a Palm Sunday in 1836, and on the orders of Santa Anna, they were massacred. But what we're going to talk about today, finally, is a victory for the Texas Army. An important victory that occurred at San Jacinto. Down near the coast, those of you that aren't familiar with Texas, it's not far from Houston, near the city of LaPorte. And there's a big monument there, and the battleship Texas is there. But I'd like to read something to you to get you in the mood for how important this single battle was. And this inscription is on the base of the San Jacinto monument. And it goes like this. The Battle of San Jacinto was the concluding military event of the Texas Revolution. On March 13, 1836, the Revolutionary Army at Gonzales began to retreat eastward. This was after they got word that the Alamo had fell. The Army crossed the Guadalupe River on March 17th and camped near present-day Columbus, Texas on March 20, recruiting and reinforcements having increased its size to around 1,200 men. Samhouston scouts reported Mexican troops west of the Colorado to number 1,325. So basically they were closer to having the odds evened out and not always not in their favor in regard to the Texans. On March 25th, the Texans learned of James W. Fannin's defeat at Goliad, and many of the men left the army to join their families on the runaway scrape. The runaway scrape was the event that happened after Samhouston had been in Gonzales and had found out about the fall of the Alamo. And the army and all the families started retreating east. Samhouston led his troops to San Felipe de Austin by March 28th, and by March 30th to the Jared E. Gross plantation on the Brazos River, where they camped and drilled for a fortnight. Ad interim President David G. Burnett ordered Austin to stop his retreat. Secretary of War Thomas J. Rusk encouraged Houston to take a more decisive action. Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna decided to take possession of the Texas coast and seaports. With that object in view, he crossed the Brazos River at present-day Richmond on April 11th, and on April 15th, with some 700 men, he arrived at Harrisburg. He burned Harrisburg and started in pursuit of the Texas government at New Washington, or Morgan's Point, where he arrived on April 19th to find that the government had fled to Galveston. The Mexican general then set out for Anahuac by way of Lynchburg. Meanwhile, the Texans on April 11th received the Twin Sisters cannons, and with the cannon as extra fortification, crossed the Brazos River on the Yellowstone side-wheel steamer, and on April 16th reached Spring Creek in present Harris County. On April 17th, to the gratification of his men, Houston took the road to Harrisburg instead of the road to Louisiana, and on April 18th, he reached White Oak Bayou at a site within the present city limits of Houston. There he learned that Santa Anna had gone down the west side of the bayou and the San Jacinto River, crossing a bridge over Vince's Bayou. The Mexicans would have to cross that same bridge to return. Viewing this strategic situation on the morning of April 19th, Houston told his troops that it looked as if they would soon get action, and admonished them to remember the massacres at the Alamo and at Goliad. On the evening of April 19th, his forces crossed the Buffalo Bayou to the west side, 2.5 miles below Harrisburg. Some 248 men, mostly sick and ineffective, were left with the baggage at the camp opposite Harrisburg. The march was continued until midnight, and at dawn on April 20th, the Texans resumed their trek down the bayou, and at Lynch's Ferry captured a boat laden with supplies for Santa Anna. They then drew back about a mile on the Harrisburg Road and encamped in a skirt of timber protected by rising ground. That afternoon, Sidney Sherman, with a small detachment of cavalry, engaged the enemy infantry, almost bringing on a general action. In the clash, Owens J. Trask was mortally wounded, one other Texan was wounded, and several horses were killed. Marabou B. Lamar, a private, so distinguished himself that on the next day he was placed in command of the cavalry. Santa Anna had made camp under the high ground overlooking a marsh about 3/4 of a mile from the Texas camp, and threw up his breastworks of trunks, baggage, pack saddles, and other equipment. Both sides prepared for the conflict, and on Thursday morning, April 21st, the Texans were eager to attack. About 9 o'clock, they learned that Martin Perfecto de Cos had crossed Vince's Bridge with about 540 troops and had swelled the enemy forces to about 1,200. Houston ordered Erastus Deaf Smith to destroy the bridge and prevent further enemy reinforcements. The move would prevent the retreat of either the Texans or the Mexicans towards Harrisburg. Shortly before noon, Houston held a council of war with Edward Burleson, Sidney Sherman, Henry W. Mallard, Alexander Somerville, Joseph L. Bennett, and Lysander Wells. Two of the officers suggested attacking the enemy in his position. The others favored waiting on Santa Anna to attack. General Houston withheld his own views at the council, but later, after having formed his plan plan of battle, he had it approved by Rusk. Houston disposed his forces in battle order about 3:30 in the afternoon. This is on April 21st, 1836. While all was quiet on the Mexican side during their afternoon siesta, the Texans' movements were screened by trees and the rising ground, and evidently Santa Anna had no lookouts posted. The battle line was formed with Edward Burleson's regiment in the center, Sherman's on the left wing, the artillery under George W. Hockley on Burleson's right, the infantry under Henry Millard on the right side of the artillery, and the cavalry under Marabou B. Lamar was on the extreme right. The Twin Sisters cannons were wheeled into position, and the whole line, led by Sherman's men, sprang forward on the run with the cry, "Remember the Alamo, remember Goliad." The battle lasted but 18 minutes, and according to Houston's official report, the casualties were 630 Mexicans killed and 730 taken prisoner. Against this, only 9 of the 910 Texans were killed or mortally wounded, and 30 were wounded less seriously. Houston's ankle was shattered by a musket ball. He had 2 horses shot out from under him, and the Texans captured a large supply of muskets, pistols, sabers, mules, horses, provisions, clothing, tents, and $12,000 in silver. Santa Anna disappeared during the battle, and search parties were sent out on the morning of the 22nd. The parties consisted of James A. Sylvester, Washington H. Secrest, Sion R. Bostic, and a Mr. Cole, and they discovered Santa Anna hiding in the grass. He was dirty and wet and was dressed as a common soldier. The search party did not recognize him until he was addressed as El Presidente by other Mexican prisoners. One of the 8 transcriptions or inscriptions on the exterior base of the San Jacinto monument reads, now I want you to listen to this very carefully, and you'll see what an impact this battle had on the future of the United States of America. And here's how it reads. Measured by its results, San Jacinto was one of the decisive battles of the world. The freedom of Texas from Mexico, won there, led to annexation of Texas, and that led to the Mexican War. And that war resulting in the acquisition by the United States of the states of Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, California, Utah, and parts of Colorado and Wyoming and Kansas and Oklahoma, almost 1/3 of the present area of the American nation, nearly 1 million square miles of territory, changed sovereignty because of that battle. Now think about that, folks. Did you ever know of all these states that came under United States control because of this one battle? This one battle. It's amazing to me, and I've studied Texas history for years and years and years. It's an amazing event. After the tragedy at the Alamo and the tragedy at Goliad and several other battles, this final event would guarantee the freedom of the Lone Star State. That's something to ponder, friends. That's something to think about. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. But that's the way it happened. That's the way it happened. An 18-minute battle. An 18-minute battle caused the United States to increase in size by more than a quarter. It's something. It's something. But anyway, friends, I hope you've enjoyed. This is pretty much the conclusion of the Texas Revolution. In fact, it is. And we'll move on to more stories about other things next time. But I hope you enjoyed this. I appreciate you listening. And we'll talk to you later on with another Lone Star Diary. But for now, God bless Texas. Goodbye, everybody.